Welcome to this research course. Now, this is not just any type of research. This is particularly social research, deals with people in society. Particularly, this will focus on quantitative methods in social research. So for the rest of the next lessons, the focus will be more on quantitative methods. So for this lesson, we are going to talk about research process, analysis, and methods, more on overview. So we're going to cover topics such as the research connections, research methods flexibility, and quantitative focus. Now we are going to deal with in this research connections, the research paradigms, research methods, and research tools that correspond to. Now, the research paradigms. A paradigm is a worldview of how we look at the complexity of the world. Paradigms in research are often regarded in terms of the ways in which they respond to basic philosophical questions. Formal query is usually being done within two broad paradigms, both of which have legitimacy for research. One paradigm for research is known as positivism. Although strict positivist thinking has been challenged and undermined, a modified positivist position remains a dominant force in scientific research. Now, positivism is a reflection of a broader cultural phenomenon which emphasizes the rational and the scientific. And in the humanities, positivism is referred to as modernism. It is rooted in 19th century thought, guided by such philosophers as Comte, Locke, Neil Newton, which you may discuss in your sociological theory, the classical sociological theory. Okay, the other one paradigm is we call naturalism. Just as positivism reflects the cultural phenomenon of modernism that burgeoned in the wake of the Industrial Revolution, naturalism is a counter-movement to positivism with writers such as Weber and an outgrowth of the pervasive cultural transformation. This is usually also referred to as postmodernism. This represents a major alternative system for conducting disciplined research. Now, positivism's research method is considered to be quantitative, okay, while the naturalism is that of qualitative. The research tools for quantitative would be the questionnaire and the interview schedule, while the qualitative would be the question guide and the interview guide. We will discuss further about this in the next slides. So the quantitative and qualitative research methods, from the word quantity, it asks the question, how many? From the word quality, it asks the question, why? How, for example, in the quantitative, this is more for generalization purposes, for predictions. We are aware that in policy making, the basis is mostly how many people are affected. For example, this COVID-19 pandemic, it affects almost everyone in society. So the government has had to give proper budget for it because of the magnitude of the effect about a social phenomenon on many lives in the community or society. The qualitative, on the other hand, it focuses on knowing why, knowing the reasons. So there is that depth of information that you are going to obtain for a particular research topic. So, for example, um, on drug addiction, prostitution, topics such as the victim, the woman who becomes a widow because of the Marawi change. So you wanted to know how the woman feels, the widow, how she copes with life after the husband is uh, gone because of that untoward incident. So you need to dig deeper into the life of a particular person or particular topic. Now, the research methods given, okay, broadly speaking, these research methods are techniques used by researchers to structure a study and to gather and analyze information relevant to the research question. So these two alternative paradigms have strong implications for the research methods to be used, although positivists sometimes engage in qualitative um, studies, and naturalistic researchers sometimes collect quantitative information. So that's how flexible these research paradigms are. Okay. So the positivists sometimes engage in, as what's implicated in these arrows. They sometimes cross, although the positivism is largely quantitative and naturalism is largely qualitative, but they may crisscross to obtain additional information from the other side. That makes the method to be a mixture of quantitative, qualitative research. Now, quantitative researchers gather empirical evidence rooted in objective reality. So when you say empirical evidence, there is no bias, no personal opinion, just facts. So these are facts observed and verified as true. No? When you say empirical evidence, so you get to gather this information or evidences through sight, the senses of sight, hearing, taste, touch, or smell. For example, you can see the red lines in here. That tells you if there's just one line, not pregnant, if two lines, pregnant. And hearing, so when a child cries, you can hear it. So that's the sense of hearing. Of course, it's different when you just are able to see, but you are so far to hear what they are talking about. So also, you're so near that even the smell sense is activated. Okay, now the quantitative researchers use deductive reasoning from general to particular to generate hunches that are tested in the real world. So they typically move in orderly and systematic fashion from the definition of the problem and the selection of concepts on which to focus. We are now talking about the research process here actually. So through the design of the study and collection of information. So you see, qualitative method will also differ in this aspect. In terms of design, in terms of definition of the problem. So from here, through the design of the study to the solution of the problem. That's why we do research, because there are questions that we need to answer. Okay. Examples of empirical observations. Someone's pimple, you can see that with the use of sight. Your heart rate after you jog in place. You can feel that actually, the thumping of your heart. But you can really count that. You can count the heart rate. Your waistline after months of COVID-19's enforced stay-home directive, but it may be one way or the other. Like you engage in exercise, so you become leaner, or you just eat and you become fatter. So these are all objective information. So the research process basically involves these major steps: definition of the problem, the data gathering follows when you have defined a problem, like you already have identified the concepts that you are going to use and what you really want to study. So you already have asked here the questions that you need to get answers from. Then you are to proceed with the data gathering and then data analysis after of the gathered data and the verification of the results, whether or not uh, you are going to approve or not the results of the study as you verified it based on how it answered the questions. So basically, it will look like this in the research process: the statement of the problem. When you have it already, you are going to proceed to reading the related literature. So you are going to review existing research and also existing theory. Then you formulate study frameworks, how the variables may be connected from one another. Like, for example, the age, how is it connected with the attitude? Like something like that. Now, determination of appropriate methodology and research design, whether you are going to embark on the quantitative or the qualitative method. And then the design of data collection instrument. So if you are going to, you remember a while ago, we have shown that if you're going to embark on the quantitative method, the research instrument or tools that you're going to use would be either the questionnaire or the interview schedule. But if it will be the qualitative, then you just need to have a guide. Then you proceed to data collection and data analysis and interpretation. It depends on the data that you have gathered. Quantitative data will entail statistical analysis compared to the in-depth interpretation of the qualitative data that you have gathered. Then you proceed to the presentation of the results. So roughly this will be the whole research process that you are going to do. Now, of course, I've mentioned this, the research analysis. Okay, you get to answer these two questions to focus. Now, you are going to have the research variable, the independent variable or the dependent variable. The perceived cause would be the independent variable. The perceived effect would be the dependent variable. Of course, we know what a variable is. It is when that particular concept has variation among people. Like, for example, age varies from one person to another. Sex varies from one person to another, and so on. Income, a number of children. So, for example, the perceived cause, logging in Google Meet as a perceived cause. And then, because there is an intervening variable on connectivity, the dependent variable, which is the perceived result, would be, or for perceived effect, would be the presence or absence in the Google Meet. So you are absent because there is low connectivity that intervenes with your logging in the Google Meet. Or you are present because your connectivity is strong and you get to log in Google Meet. So just very basic, simple example as to the interplay of these variables we call independent, dependent, and intervening variables. So the research methods that we are going to tackle include case study, sample survey, experiment, and feasibility study. The case study is largely qualitative. The rest can be quantitative. I mean, the feasibility study can be both qualitative, quantitative focus. The sample survey is fully quantitative method as well as experiment method. So we may be able to discuss this fully in the next lessons. So when to use the case study? When objective is to observe a process in depth. A process involves systematic steps from start to finish. That's why anthropologists use this, and they are going to record everything in the so-called diary. Okay, fieldwork diary. Now the survey research, when objective is to have a general picture of people's awareness, knowledge, attitude, and behavior towards a thing, event, or situation. Like, for example, COVID-19. So you don't need to study the whole Philippines. You may need only to have a sample of the whole from the whole population. So the experiment, on the other hand, you're going to use this when objective is to determine the cause and effect of certain social phenomena under controlled conditions. So usually the natural scientists, biologists, zoologists use this in their methodology when they study in comparison with the control group and the experiment group with regards to mice. For example, if there is medicine injected to the mice, they are the experiment group. So those that are not injected, they are the control group. And then later compare the results of both groups. So that's experiment method. Feasibility study, when objective is to find out the economic viability of establishing a certain structure or institution. So when you are to open a business, then you need to know if the people in that area will patronize your business. For example, it's a coffee shop. Are the people living surrounding that area coffee drinkers? So you need to know that by doing a feasibility study. So we'll end here. We'll see each other in the next lesson, which would be focused on sample survey.